Okay, today I'm welcoming a huge success story, Sebastian Olaya, who came to me from a marketing and communications background or came to hire a Headhunter, and he became a remote native. And he has been working as a SAF, product manager, SAF, which is a type of enterprise level agile. And how he came and what we're going to explore today is how he converted his marketing and communications background that he gained in Colombia. So this is also a story about achieving the American dream and how at Hire Headhunter, we are helping new residents to the country really achieve salaries that are on par and work that's on par with what they were doing in their country, because many times new residents here become discounted. It's a very common problem. And we're able to solve for that. So I would like to welcome Sebas, which is the shortening of his name. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you for that great introduction. It's a perfect summary of, my last years, coming to this country and, becoming a remote native and, getting new opportunities. So, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how this whole transition, first of all, your background in Colombia, both work and personal, and then how this all came to pass.
All right. So I was born and raised in Cali, Colombia. My mom was a single mom and, she didn't go to college. So I am the first generation graduate of, undergrad or master's. And, going back to my childhood and all that. So my mom, she worked very hard to send me through school and I knew I would want to support her later on, right? So when I had the opportunity to come to the States, I knew I finally had the opportunity to take care of both of us. So, trying to blend into the culture. So I think being Colombian it was a positive thing because Colombians are serious hustlers like Americans are. So it was, pretty easy to blend into the work culture and, that work culture that rewards you, for what you accomplish and opens a world of opportunities and possibilities for you. So the mantra that, my mom gave me when I was a kid is work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen after that.
Right. And, so when you were thinking about, and just so everyone knows, Cali is a huge mega city in Colombia. It's a totally different environment. But one of the things I always say about the Colombians is that hustler concept. Like Colombians are always looking to how to better themselves, how to have a better career, how to move forward. There's a really high energy, high octane type of aspect to that particular Latin American culture. And I do feel like when I go from between Colombia and the United States, the energy shift is not as big as maybe some other Latin American countries. So, go ahead and tell me about like how you chose your career early on in the marketing and communication space, and then, like that shift into the United States.
Well, so I've been always a social butterfly, as my friends say. So I majored in communications and journalism. So, the part of communications, marketing, and social interaction was, something that I had in me since I was a kid. So, so I chose to go over that route. And well, so I've never been a journalist. So that's why I decided to go to marketing to put, those skills into work when I was, picking my career. So basically, I had, some technical background, analyzing data, analyzing social, sciences and how people interact and all that. So it was perfect to, become a professional in marketing and communications. So back in Colombia, I got to a middle management position, but when I moved to the States, it was, trying to, learn new things and, use that experience. Of course, when you get here, you have to, learn about the market, learn about a new language, of course. So, and I want to, make a stop there because, the way I spoke when I got to this country is completely different of how I'm speaking today, right? So it's about, okay, taking everything that it's put into in your path to learn and be better every day, basically.
Right. And it's not just English we're talking about here. It's also the difference in business language and how to communicate that, which I think is sort of the next step we're going. And that is how what you learned in marketing, what was missing in marketing communications for your new career, and what helped in positioning you to make this change to become a remote native.
Well, so when you are, in college, so marketing and communications focuses on, social interactions, the emotional connection that you have, when you are doing a campaign and all that. But, some of the programs are lacking, the numbers part. And, so when you get to your first jobs, you are presenting marketing and communications that only advocate for creativity and that emotional connection without knowing about ROI, costs, budget, and all of those metrics that, finance people love. So you start feeling lost about, when executives start asking you about those numbers, how are they tied to the KPIs, to the company objectives. So at some point, I knew that I needed to, start doing something around the numbers. So that's when I decided to go for my MBA, right? To understand the company, but not only in the marketing part, but, as the big picture and adding numbers to everything that I did. So, learning how to communicate ROI and, how to impact, with numbers, but also with the emotional connection was a critical asset that, I got.
So let's talk about, because, before you were told about Hire Headhunter and how to reposition your skills for the American market and that this unique aspect, the difference between the two, can you tell me a little bit about whether you were happy or satisfied or disappointed? I mean, obviously, when someone comes to us, they usually have an ask. It's remote and it's more income and also to be on a better professional path. So, help me understand how you were feeling before, we did your repositioning and that you move forward.
Well, so, back in those days, I had a terrible time finding a good role in the American market. So, I came from a middle management position and all that. So I had to take a non-leadership position in marketing that, in a way, it wasn't exactly what I was doing in Colombia, but it gave me the opportunity to understand, about marketing segmentation in the United States, e-commerce, digital marketing, storytelling, and how to defend business cases. And of course, we talk about, getting a new business language as well, because it is very different to, speak on a daily basis on the street and, speaking at the office, trying to defend your ideas, try to, get your point across and all of that. So it was a, very good journey for me. And I really enjoyed, learning all of those things. So yeah, in those positions, I started working with different MarTech suites, right? So it gave me the opportunity to start, blending technology into marketing and understanding new trends, new technologies that are implemented here in the United States. Because at the end, so when you are looking for a point of reference of marketing, you always look to what Americans do to implement in, different regions and different, countries worldwide, right? So it was a great opportunity for that. So when I hired a headhunter, I finally learned how to, how to promote myself and how to sell all the skill set that I have in order to find, new opportunities, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that confuses people when they first get here, because there's this whole concept of the American dream, and a lot of people get in, they're like, is it dead? Because the international experience is discounted in the American market, and there's no real reason for it other than just perception. The perception is that American-based experience is, the primo experience. And so there's ways to reposition in addition to that. And I'm sure, you were surprised by this when we looked at your skill set and examined the opportunities that were out there for what you have done that was in demand in the market. Those titles were totally different, right?
Right. And also they had like technical component that I didn't have. But at the end, so it's easy to learn. And if you are willing to learn and, collaborate with different team members, you learn those things that you don't know, but I mean, they are there. And also, when we are talking about tech positions, they are very customer centric. They require understanding of consumer behavior, social interaction, using technology, data analysis, problem solving. And, those are skills that I had, from my previous experience in marketing. So this is something really cool because everything came together and I got to match my experience with my passion, right? So it was perfect.
Yeah, there was a real marriage that occurred, that was beautiful, that you did have the technical skills. You're not CIS, you're not a programmer or anything like that, but you really were deep into the software pieces, the data analysis, and once again, that customer journey that is so critical when you're developing a new software piece. There's going to be a user on the other end using whatever this is. And being able to communicate that and also work between the DevOps team and, the customer and probably some project managers. I don't know even all the people you're interacting with, but this is critical. It's a highly communicative role, no?
Yeah. And also, so product managers don't have to know everything, but they should have the emotional intelligence to collaborate with different team members, with multidisciplinary teams. So with finance, with marketing, and even with the end users, right? Because, that interaction is what, provide product managers with all the information we need to solve problems, right? And to, work with the development team on the best solution possible, right? And to create, minimum viable products and all of that to, actually change all the experience that, those users have, along the customer journey. Because for example, if you get a product, yes, you have the product in your hand, but, the customer journey is not only having the product and using it, is, when you start dreaming about the product, or when you start, making decisions about what product, or, making comparisons between, similar products and all that. So that's why that's when, product managers need to understand all the different touch points of the customer journey to provide better experiences in each of them.
I mean, that's a perfect description of really bringing all those different cross points together, different stakeholders together to get it done. So tell me about some of, going back to the remote native concept, what are you doing to help stay on task, in your work at home, and what do you do to be productive?
Well, so I'm a list maker. So, crossing off the items of the list helps me stay focused on the different tasks that I have, on a daily basis. So when you are a remote, worker, you have to be very organized on the different things that you want to accomplish, on your day to day, right? Because, some people say, oh my God, no, I get distracted at home. Yeah, maybe because, you are, taking some time to do different things other than work. So you have to be very, how do I put this? Like very
self-driven.
self-driven, right? Yeah. And organized on the things that you want to accomplish. That's it. That's key.
Well, let's talk about some of the, cool tools. Is there something tools going on out there that you're using that help you with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use, Miro boards for design thinking sessions. So I invite, different team members. I invite, end users and all that, because in those sessions, I want to identify what is the, the pain points that they are going through, and what are the, the problems that we need to solve. So that's perfect. We have people in different geographies. We have people across the US, even in Latin America, in Asia, and all that. So it's very helpful, because at the end, technology has the possibility to bring everyone together to collaborate. So it's perfect. Also, when I'm working with UI, UX designers, Figma, it's great to provide feedback, to even prototype and have, functioning prototypes. So something that you can send to your end users and, hey, let's test. Is this working? And if it's not, tell me why, and all that. So it's very interactive, and it's a very iterative process, because we start with one idea, and maybe along the way we find out that, maybe some things are not working. So we have the possibility to tweak almost in real time. So that's great. And that is something that, the pandemic back in 2020, help us, discover in a way, because we were very used to sitting down in your office and collaborating with the people that were there. But now, with all the technical and technological advances that we had over the last 3 years, so the world has opened for us. So that is great.
Well, and I think you mentioned, that you were using ChatGPT for something. So I know that's such a big topic, like how ChatGPT is being used.
Well, not so many people know that, Google Chrome as a browser has extensions, and you can download those extensions, to your browser, and you can use it for many things. So basically what I'm doing with ChatGPT is I hit record to my sessions, to my meetings and all that. And ChatGPT basically helps you to, put together your notes, to organize them, to, the ChatGPT even knows who's speaking at a certain point. So it says, okay, Karen said this, or this user said that. So here are the highlights. And even, it makes highlights of all the notes, of all the conversations. So we have all the technology at hand. We don't need to, have a meeting and then go back for, the same hour or 2 hours that you use to do your session to make the notes. Everything is there. So, and it takes, 5 seconds. So it's amazing.
That is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So where are we with continuing education? What are you working on now? Like, so much has changed. I mean, really, it's only been 3 years, and I know you've easily, doubled your income. You are on par. You are at American wages for your skill set now. What are you doing to stay fresh and vibrant and growing in your career?
Well, I always, look for new certifications, for courses and all that. So, over the past 3 years, I've been certified by Scrum Alliance as Scrum Master and Product Owner. And also I'm certified as SAFe 5.0. So now, the version of the certification is 6.0. Sorry, I had
right. You're good.
Yeah. So now I'm looking for, for updating that certification. And actually next week, I'm going to get certified as a SAFe product manager in the 6.0 version. So that's great. So it's to be updated on an enterprise level methodology and a strategy because, basically, when you are delivering software, yes, agile and you know how to work with the developers, but most of those methodologies that we use to create software can be used for at an enterprise level, and you can start collaborating with accounting, with all of them to make an improvement in the processes, right? To be more agile, to be more nimble with the market, to have everyone organized towards a company goal, and be more efficient on how you achieve those goals.
Well, and speaking of goals, why don't you tell us the project that you're working on right now to get an idea of the scope of what you're working on?
Well, so now I work for Regent Seven Seas Cruises, which is part of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings. And as a product manager, I am supporting a new e-commerce app that helps guests to create a seamless booking experience from the cruise itself through onboard activities, dining, and short excursions. So, I am the liaison between the marketing team and the developers. And working with marketing, I, try to understand that customer journey to create the different product roadmaps and the tactical plans for the development team, right? And also, I am, that person that understands the business, but, knows how to translate those business needs into technical requirements. So that's great, and vice versa. So maybe, upper management, they are not very, tech savvy or something like that. So it's, translating those technical requirements and, backend APIs, integrations into, more business language, right? So
and
that's great.
Driving revenue, saving costs, right? That's what the goal is.
Right. And also is, leveraging all of those amount of quantitative and qualitative data to, get to generate more revenue. Also, working with other departments, because technology, for example, reduce customer service calls. We have, the way to identify what the users are looking for to create, new packages and all that. And that's the power of data, that data, it's, at our fingertips, and we have an incredible amount of data to understand what is the customer need. So that's crucial in the role.
How are you contributing to the greater industry or as a thought leader right now?
Well, that's really great that you asked that, because in the last year, I've been an instructor for the product management bootcamp in association with EDX and Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Wow.
So I'm doing it remotely, and, I do it to provide aspiring and current product managers with tools to excel at their jobs. So mentoring the next generation is one of the most rewarding aspects of my full-time and teaching jobs, because when you teach something, it pushes you to be updated, to keep learning, be prepared for questions, and know what is the best way to answer, right? So it's basically a two-way benefit, right? Because they benefit from my experience, and I benefit from, preparing my classes and all of that. So, and to be updated with the latest trends. So that's great.
Right. And developing new leaders to contribute to the success.
Right. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
That you feel that you are contributing to a larger cause.
Yeah. I love that. So what recommendations do you have for listeners who want to go remote native and have a remote career?
Well, so when I mentor junior staff, I remember that you said, if you have done it, you can get it.
Right.
So, this process has taught me how to identify and position my skills and help the junior staff to get the experiences they need to develop to get ahead in their careers. And I have also learned to trust the process and also to find experts to learn their best practices and apply it to win. So yeah, so that's my recommendation. Always be on the lookout for new things, have an open mind, and always try to learn.
Right. This is one of the things that we impart when people come to us is the job market is literally sitting there telling you what you need to get. And then the fact that not only have you invested in achieving this for yourself, but then you're helping, once again, people develop so that they can get it and rise up too, and not be competitive and keep people down, so that everyone is succeeding. And I love that. And, and then the concept of, trusting the process is so important because, you hire experts. You're an expert now in what you're doing. It's important to know people get good at something for a reason and to follow their lead and then go on your own and improve. The students should always, be able to supersede or overcome the master type of thing. And, but you got to start with those platforms of core skills. So, well, is there anything else you want to add?
No, this is, great. And thank you for the opportunity to share my experience and my background and all that. And yeah, thank you.
I'm so impressed.
I hope to be here next time.
Oh yeah. Well, you're just going to keep growing here. And, I'm totally impressed because there is a certain type of personality where you kind of have to be really ready to step into your power. And if I say, hey, this is what we need to do, once again, leave some of the old narratives behind, shift your thinking and go for the win, basically, and go take those skills and move into that new narrative. And you did it so well. I'm so impressed and glad that if there were any way that we contributed to that success, we're just thrilled for you.
Yeah. And, just to close is, I've told you, your company and you changed my life forever and opened me, the world for all the opportunities and, guided me to get the right ones and, to follow a new path. And I'm forever grateful for that.
I'm going to cry. Well, I mean, it's you're like, oh God, let's go. No, this is what we want. We want to change people's lives and help them achieve their dreams, and the remote native way as well, where you get that work-life flexibility and are, where you need to be to achieve your goals. So just so impressed, so glad to have you here. Besos y abrazos. And we will, Los vemos. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks, Sebas.
Thank you.
Bye now.